What is up, IDP Army? It's your man, Jordan Rains, back again with another episode of the IDP Army podcast, where we are talking mostly IDP, all fantasy football. Make sure you subscribe wherever you are listening to this. If you're on YouTube, hit the thumbs up, follow, all that fun stuff. Got a really fun topic for you all today, whenever you are listening, watching this. We are going to talk about what is Dynasty Fantasy Football? And you know, you're probably like, oh, I've heard this conversation before. Well, I promise you haven't heard this conversation before. So I'm excited to let you all know that I'm going to be joined tonight by Samantha Holt of Fantasy and Focused. And here she comes.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for joining me tonight.
Of course, I'm super excited. I love IDP. We were talking a little bit off air. I'm super excited to, get a little bit more. I'm not going to go too nitty-gritty on it, but just why I love it and why it's, been super important for me in my Dynasty formats, why I love it so much.
Yes, excellent. Yes, I was very happy when I reached out to you to find that you have been playing IDP even longer than I have, and that you have lots of Dynasty experience as well. So I was like, shit, let's get her on the show. So we are going to talk about what is Dynasty Fantasy Football. It seems to be growing in popularity. I came into the space as a redraft player. A lot of people did. Even some people may have come in from DFS. Everybody's fantasy football journey is different, but a lot of people are finding that if they like fantasy football in the regular season and they want to keep that going, Dynasty Fantasy Football is literally, it's the solution to all your problems. So more and more people are coming into Dynasty. Last year we had all the COVID leagues popping up, about all that. So we all ended up in double-digit Dynasty leagues. Don't lie, we know you did it, but we all did it, so it's okay. But before we jump into that, we were going to talk about some just random news and stuff. But JJ Watt, that was kind of the big IDP news for the week. He signed with the Arizona Cardinals. I was kind of surprised that he went there personally. What did you think about that?
I mean, I was surprised too. I think there were a lot of different indicators and all of us trying to decipher his Instagram posts for the last couple weeks to figure out where he was going to go. Some news that he had purchased a house in Ohio. So Ohio fans were getting excited thinking he was going to go to the Browns. Steelers fans were getting excited because, we just see a bunch of stuff with him and his brothers. Okay, they're talking. Could they all be on the same team? We finally get to collect them all, collect the whole set.
Yes.
But then he went to Arizona, which I think was completely out of left field for a lot of us. I think it's a good fit, though. I think that there's a lot of different ways that he can, with his veteran presence, make an impact on that defense. I don't think that, and I don't think it's crazy to say, he's not the JJ Watt of 2014. He's not going to come into that season and get 20 sacks. But what he's going to do is instill a lot of confidence with the younger guys and show how they can be a more fluid, cohesive front. And then, I think he's going to do a lot of good things with that team.
Yeah, that's kind of what that team was missing last year. I mean, they had a couple of closers, but they really didn't have that. They had some great players, they didn't really have that solid unit. It couldn't really stop a drive when it really, really counted. You know what I mean? The big, sack games all came against crappy teams like the New York Giants and all that. But yeah, I like the landing spot. 2 years. I mean, he got paid like a high level pass rusher. I mean, not necessarily the 20 mil or whatever, but he says he went there because of Kyler. I guess that means he believes that the Arizona Cardinals team is going the right way. I'm personally not a huge Kyler guy. I think he maybe got a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's DeAndre Hopkins, I think maybe swayed him a little bit. They had a very, they really, their hearts of their career happened together in Houston. So that probably played into it a little bit, but I like the signing. It makes me sad for my Hassan Reddick shares because that makes me think that they're definitely going to be moving on from him. No more money to pay him, but I'm interested to see where he lands. He's got some pass rushing chops.
No, for sure. I mean, for me, I think I think he probably signed there because he's looking for playoffs. And I mean, when you're looking for playoffs, he's looking for a ring. He wants to finish out his career with a Super Bowl win. And I think that there's a lot of great youth and a lot of value still with the Cardinals right now. And if they don't win, I'm not saying they're going to win a Super Bowl this year, but I think that if they can shore up that defense and Kyler under one more year, he's already got such good legs. He's got amazing rushing floor, which is why you love him for fantasy. But when he gets another year into this system and they can really start clicking, I think there's going to be a lot more progress. There was a lot of good flashes, a lot of good moments. And this next year for Kyler, I think we'll see a bit more consistency across the board. And when you bring in a veteran presence like JJ, along with, Hopkins, who's going to have been there another year, you're going to see a bit more of that consistency across the board. And I think that's what they're going for.
Yeah, love it, love it. Let's stick in the same division. Russell Wilson, the man with a plan, he seems to be looking for the exit door out of Seattle. What do you make of this? I mean, for one, I mean, it just really, to me, it highlights that we know nothing in Dynasty. Everybody's like, oh, this guy's, I mean, 3 months ago, you would have said that Russell Wilson was going to retire a Seattle Seahawk. I mean, that would have just been like the thing, the default answer. Now it's like, well, we're answering calls, but we're not going to trade him. It's like, okay, like we've played this song and dance before. Like we know what's happening here. Is this not just crazy? Like,
I think it's crazy. I think that Seattle would be completely idiotic to trade him. But I think if anything, what happens by Russell Wilson saying this, it's what he's saying is, I am not happy with what I'm working with right now. I need more. And you need to give me more in order for me to want to stay and play happily. And I think hopefully, you know, the front office can make some good decisions and get him some more pieces, get some more consistency. Obviously, they dealt with a lot of injuries last year. Their running back position has still been too much of a mix mash for them to get the running game going. And I think that Russell Wilson's had a lot of good moments this past season. He had some great ones as well. But the defense, like, what happened to that defense? It used to be a really strong defensive front, and it is just not that. So what he's looking at is Richard Sherman left. So they need more parts in order to make the entire team successful. Defense wins championships, and they would go through games where they were doing well, and then because their defense could not keep up, it was just exhausting Russell Wilson. So he can't be consistent that way.
Yeah,
it's just not fair.
Their defense definitely is not what it used to be. And I think, you know, part of it too is Russell Wilson, I read today or saw today, you know, he views himself as a top 5 quarterback, and he's not used that way. And that would be very frustrating to, you know that you've got the juice and know you've got the skills and even know you got the pieces around you, and your coach is out here, you know, having you drop back 14 times, you know. It's just like, dude, come on. And you watch Patrick Mahomes and you watch Tom Brady ripping it, you know, a guy that you've beat in the Super Bowl. You know, he just won another Super Bowl and you haven't even been back. He's been back a couple times. It's just like, that's got to be pretty annoying. So you know, free Russell Wilson, I guess.
No, free Russell Wilson. I mean, based on the stats that he had this last season too, it's crazy that they didn't have better progress in the playoffs. He had over 4,000 passing yards. He had 40 passing touchdowns. He had 83 carries, over 500 rushing yards himself, and 2 rushing touchdowns on his own. So with crazy stats like that, did they not go further? How did they not go further? Because the entire team wasn't well-rounded. He can't carry the entire team.
Yeah, they hamstrung him for sure. And again, I think their corner situation, I mean, since Earl Thomas left, Cam Chancellor, and then Richard Sherman, I mean, everyone's like Bobby Wagner. I get it. Bobby Wagner's great. But I mean, that defense,
he's one guy.
He was one guy on an elite defense. Bruce Irving too. I mean, there was guys all over that defense. Okay. I mean, Bobby Wagner, we love to talk about him, but even as an IDP person, he's a little juiced up for me. All right, let's do some free agency talk. Sure. I figured we would just talk about a couple of odds and ends, guys. This is a big year. Let's stick with the Steelers. Before we do that, though, with all these quarterbacks going crazy right now, doesn't it just like kill you as a Steelers fan that we just re-signed Big Ben? Like, I'm just like, please no.
Yeah, no, I mean,
I love Big Ben, but I want to win.
I know. I want to win too. And then I was hoping, okay, maybe this offseason we'll make some moves, finally get, some young blood in there at quarterback. And then we signed Dwayne Haskins. And I was like, that's not what I meant.
Yeah,
that wasn't, close. No.
And
no,
there's
it's
guys
like when you send an email and it's just like, it goes unread. And then someone reads the first line of the email and then they reply, it's like, you didn't read the whole email. That's not what I wanted. Like, what are you doing? No, it's just.
Yeah, Dwayne Haskins is definitely not it. It's just crazy. Like, we have Deshaun Watson essentially available. We have Russell Wilson maybe available. I mean, Stafford was available. And it's just like, we're going to re-sign Big Ben, knowing that the future is dark. The night is dark and full of terrors, and it's right around the corner.
Yeah.
Big Ben, when he's running around out there, I mean, it's comical.
It's a cap space issue. And I think that, as fans, we look at that and we think, okay, well then get rid of this guy, get rid of this guy, get rid of him. We just immediately start slashing and burning, but it's it's not as simple as that. These contracts are not that simple for them to just, cut people across the board. It's like that meme, trade everyone. Like, yes, I want to make some moves in order for us to get a better quarterback. For us to be viable, in the NFL going forward, we need to have one of these crazy mobile quarterbacks that's going to be multifaceted. That's just the way that the league is changing, where you see these guys that have a great rushing floor and are able to move around. What I love about Big Ben is that, he's worked through a lot of injuries, but besides just standing back and being a brick wall, we need him to do more than that.
Yeah. He's got the weapons. It's just, I don't know, things just have not really been what they were for the Steelers. I feel like they had a window a couple of years ago, and it's like it's still cracked open, but man, that crack is getting smaller and smaller. So.
And the air is getting cold that's going through that window.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Juju. I've kind of been speculating that I think he's going to end up on the Dolphins. Based on absolutely nothing, just me kind of pulling that out of thin air. But I mean, he's a great receiver. He's a possession receiver. That he may not be a true alpha, but they have enough picks that they're going to go there this year. They'll address the wide receiver position in a way they did not last year with those picks, So I could see them kind of making a power, like a power move. Like this could be an assault year for the Dolphins, especially if they make this aggressive move for their quarterback. But what do you think about Juju? Do you want him to come back to the Steelers? Where would you like him to land? What do you think about, Miami as a potential spot?
Miami's a potential spot, a spot that I think for Juju, he's a hometown guy as well. So he's, when he's off season, he's in LA. So that's where he's at all the time. I wouldn't be surprised, because he's a big family guy, if he wanted to stay in LA. And if he did that, I think that the Chargers would actually be a good fit for him. Him with Herbert, I think, would be a really good combo. And I think that they have some other guys that are going to become free agents that could free up some cap space, and I think makes sense for him to stay home. So I could see that being a fit. I love Juju. I think he's, a fantastic receiver. I think he's a great personality, and also just a really fun off the field guy, fun follow on all the platforms. I think that it might be time for us to let go. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy for me. I don't want to let go. I want to hold on tight to all of my Steelers forever. Just like I wish we still had Polamalu and Hines Ward. I wish I had all my guys so they could all just be together. However, realistically, moving forward, I don't know that Juju is the future for the Steelers. It hurts me to say it. It hurts. Like, I'm getting choked up. It's not okay.
Yeah, I know. You're right. And it's a money thing. Claypool, it doesn't help that Claypool went out there and balled out. So
he did. He balled out. And I feel like he's got that's just the way that we've cycled through wide receivers. The freshmen come in, the sophomores stay, and then they just kind of cycle out very quickly. And that's just what happens. But it's what happens with all receivers, I think, across the board in a lot of teams. Once defenses become aware of these new, big, amazing targets. And we saw it very quickly happen this season, where immediately the coverage was on Claypool because they realized, oh shit, this big target in, the red zone, we should probably cover that guy. Yeah. So people adapt very quickly. So people know Juju's number one. So you got to just keep things moving. It sucks, but I don't want to let him go. But if he goes anywhere, I would like to see him go to the Chargers, because I think that he would still have a ton of fantasy value.
Love that. And I love that we're both, thinking give him to a young quarterback, someone he can develop some rapport with, someone he's kind of a veteran now. It's crazy to say that about Juju Smith-Schuster, but he's played in the playoff games. He's been he's been in some games. So, and he's done some things in the league. Let's talk about a defensive free agent. What do you think about Shaq Barrett's chances of, you think he's going to, I imagine he's going to want to get paid. I don't think that Tampa Bay is going to have what it takes. They could franchise tag him again, I think, but I feel like he's going to want to go out and make that money, especially as a guy who was playing like third string for Denver 2 years ago. This is kind of his moment. So where would you, have you thought about that? Or is there any like teams that you think, obviously the Seahawks need pass rush, but they're kind of cash strapped too, I think so.
Yeah, there's plenty of teams that are desperate and could use a player like him. So hopefully he does get paid. However, what I think would help him more is if he stayed one more year, because the way that the Bucs are built now with that defense is in another win situation. So as long as they don't screw things up in that sense and don't get snake bitten with injuries, they could immediately make another playoff push just the way that they're looking. They didn't just win with Brady. They won because of this amazing defense. And when everyone came back from being hurt, they were really successful together. So I would think and hope, least for Bucs fans, that he stays there and they can shore up another very successful season. I mean, even if they don't win a Super Bowl again next year, but they make it to the playoffs, that's just more that goes onto his resume to get an even bigger contract elsewhere should he get traded.
Yeah, really good point. And, the brand equity of winning back-to-back championships too. I mean, that's going to keep paying off, well after whatever your contract is. So if you can get both those things, why wouldn't you try and push for that? So I like that. And I mean, yeah, I like that. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump into the main event now. We're about 15 minutes in. Let's talk about what is Dynasty Fantasy Football. I'll kind of give my take on Dynasty Fantasy Football kind of when I entered, the space. Now that's what we call it. And then you can kind of give us your background on it, and then we'll kind of go from there. But essentially, Dynasty Fantasy Football is just like redraft, except for you have one giant draft, and then that's your main draft. It's called your fantasy startup draft. So it would be like your regular redraft league, but instead at the end of the season, instead of your rosters being cleared out and you start over, you keep those same players. It's just that simple. You're going to have bigger rosters, obviously, because you are going to keep all of the players in the league. So waiver wire situation is not going to be as hopping as it is in redraft. You're not going to be like scouring the waiver every week and seeing a lot of turnover. Maybe at the very beginning of the season you will, and in shallower leagues you will, but that's a little bit less common. And then you will have a draft every year still, like your redraft league, but it'll be what's called a rookie draft. And so in that, you will just draft from the incoming pool of rookie players. You can do that before the NFL draft. Generally, it's best done after the NFL draft, and you do that draft every single year. So you have one giant startup draft where you draft all the players that are available in the NFL. Then every year after that, you have a rookie draft. And that's essentially what Dynasty Fantasy Football is. It's just a way for you to build your team long term. It gives you more variables on how to build your team because your rosters are bigger. And it allows your league to kind of develop its own economy, ecosystem. A lot of people call it culture. It's like each league is like its own little world. Some are better than others. Some you have some of the same people in them. You might be neighbors in one league with some guy, and then another league you're like, oh, that's my arch nemesis. So you have like these through lines in your leagues. You might have you'll notice too about yourself. You'll be like, oh, somehow I have this guy on every team. Like I'm so ate up, but it's just like that's just what I'm doing this year. That's my strategy. So it gives you that ability to kind of you see how you like to play fantasy football. You see how other people play fantasy football, and it gives you a long-term approach to fantasy football. So that's kind of Dynasty Fantasy Football in a nutshell, really. Sam, what do you got for us?
Well, I mean, what's great about Dynasty is I think there's a lot of different ways that people play it. I've heard a lot of different systems across the board. I have my cousin plays in a Dynasty league in which his players are all ranked on a point system. So in order to start the year, you take the team that you had last year and you look at the points that are appointed per each player, and you can't go over a certain number of points. So let's say someone like Christian McCaffrey is a 3, and then someone like Robert Woods is a 1, and maybe Justin Herbert's a 1, and you can't go over 10 points on your keepers. So maybe you're trying to max out with a lot of studs, and then maybe you're trying to maybe only keep all the younger guys, depending on how you want to build your roster for the season. Also, like with my Dynasty League, it was 8 years ago when we started the Dynasty League, so it's hard to think back to our original draft, but ours is all based on salary. So we have a max salary cap of $300, and when you go into a draft, because we do actually have a draft every year as well as a rookie draft, when you go into the draft, you cannot go over, I want to say, $220 to enter the draft. You can't have more money on your current roster than that. And that's because you need to fill up the rest of your vacant spots. We have 13 keepers in that league. This is also a full IDP league. So there are 6 IDP slots to fill on that one. We have a rookie draft. So with the rookies, when you draft a first round rookie, their contract automatically is $5. A second round one is $3, and a third round rookie is $1. They have those rookie contracts for, I want to say, 3 years. And then after the 3 years, then you can either re-sign them and you add an extra $6 per year to the contract that you want to keep them. And that $6 is accumulated. So for Chase Claypool, I got him for $1 last year. Woo! Very excited. If I want to re-up him at the end of the 3-year rookie contract, what I'll do is look at, okay, I probably want to keep him another 3 years. That's $6 per year. So then I add that up, and that's 18 plus the $1. So now he's $19. And I keep that paying that $19 for the 3 years that I have him. This all gets very, very complicated very quickly in that league, because we just went full, as much as we can make it like a real, franchise. We did that. The one thing that we haven't done yet is create franchise tags on players. So that's a whole other thing that we're working on doing. But what I love about Dynasty, I'm going on a tangent here, is there's tons of ways to do it. So when we first did it, it was just 8 keepers. Now we're at 13. Now we're at 2 QB, and now we're at 6 slots on the IDP. It evolves. So there's lots of different ways you can do it. I know it can sound daunting in different fashions, but if you're curious about it, I would definitely encourage people to start with at least, 6 keepers, and then you have a draft, because that can also change the value of those players. And what's fun about salary is you've got someone, if they come in as a rookie like Chase Claypool, and I'm getting him really on the cheap, that's fantastic value. But then you can see how high someone like Aaron Jones will go in a draft, or how high someone like Deshaun Watson, like Patrick Mahomes, that people will pay for. And then you realize, oh, I can't overspend a certain amount in order to all get good players. So there's a whole other side to the strategy of getting these amazing players, but paying a high price for them, which is a lot more fun to me than redraft. You're really having to think about value long-term on that player.
Yeah. Redraft is very, by the time redraft season rolls around, August, it's very binary. It's like, why don't you just, you could almost just hit auto draft and then just like shoot me at a team, which is one of my big beefs with only offensive leagues. I only play in one league now that has no IDP players in it. And that league is just like, I look at my roster and it's like I go to scroll and there's nothing there. And I'm like, like, that's it. Okay. Like, that's this league. So it's kind of crazy to me, whenever you think about the draft and putting your team together, that's what you say. And it's interesting to me that you speak about keeper leagues and dynasty leagues interchangeably, which that's kind of not overly common. I feel like a lot of people have kind of moved away from keeper leagues, but it's interesting. I wonder if we'll see a resurgence in that because of the, you have a lot of exodus at the end of every year too from people from dynasty leagues, because they're like, well, this team sucks, or I can't manage this. There's nothing really coming except the rookie draft. Oh, I only have a 4th this year, and then you're like, I'm out. You get people out. But if you do, I wonder if we'll see this more where you keep like 50% of your roster. And I like also the salary cap bit you're talking about. I've never played in a salary cap league. Well, I tried to play in one, and I just couldn't do it. Like I just was like, I'm out. So I couldn't figure it out as well. But I know a lot of people really enjoy that, and I like listening to people talk about it, and I really enjoy the perspective it brings. And it's made me look at players' contracts when I look at ranking players now a lot more too, because it gives me, I said this earlier this week on a show, like in a tier of players, of quarterbacks, let's say, and you're in a tier, and the guy I was talking to was John Bauer, and he had Jalen Hurts and he had Kirk Cousins in the same tier. And he's like, that's the same tier. I was like, it is. But I was like, but when you can look at the contract and see that NFL franchises value Kirk Cousins this way, and Jalen Hurts is like a rookie on a short leash, that changes the tiers to me. So just that money side of things, seeing that, hearing more people talk about that has definitely changed how I view players and how I rank players in my head. And I think that's an important part of Dynasty too, especially, being ahead of that year of free agency or being ahead of the big contract. A lot of people right now are like, well, Dak. And I'm like, get Dak now, because as soon as that money hits the bank, you're never going to get him, just like you can't get Patrick Mahomes from me. And just like you won't, there's just, people become untouchable, and it's funny how quick it can happen too. Yeah. In the NFL, again, back to our earlier conversation where we don't know anything, so.
We don't know anything until all the chips are laid on the table. We don't know anything until the first day of the season starts. That's when we'll know 100% what we're getting.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, then the next week they'll probably, especially with the Patriots, they'll pull the rug out from under us real quick again. So you said you've played in IDP leagues. This league has been an IDP league for a while. Tell us why, or what's your experience with IDP been like? I know a lot of people don't play IDP, and that kind of not like bothers me, but I feel like it's because they don't understand it. And I feel like that's a failing on our part as content creators writ large to to engage in IDP fantasy football. Part of that may be because I said this on a video recently, because our minds, when we think about defense, we think of defensive actions as negative actions, and on offense you think of, linearly, like we're moving forward, we're scoring points, we're running up a total. And when defense, you think the opposite, but you have to think of your defensive players, in my mind, as just they're offensive players to your fantasy team. They just score their points differently. So I feel like if we could get people to kind of take a shift in their mind to, okay, like a sack is an aggressive play. Like that is something that's pushing my fantasy team forward. If we could talk about it like that, I think people might engage it a little bit more. But sorry, that was kind of a tiny tangent, but you played IDP for a while. Tell us why you enjoy IDP. Has it made the game more enjoyable for you? And just, tell us about it.
Yeah, it's definitely made it more enjoyable for me. I mean, I think, like you said, I've played in a lot of different types of formats. So I've done regular defenses. I've played in IDP. I've played in leagues that don't have any defense. But what I like about it is it creates another level of how you play against your opponent week to week. So it's kind of fun when you're playing against a quarterback where you've got some defensive players going against him. It gives you a bit more, in my opinion, an edge, or maybe just it's just a little bit of swagger when you're going into that game. You're like, okay, well, I know this guy is going to dominate on this part of the field, and he's going to be able to cut a lot of stops, get a lot of tackles. And that's the thing with IDP, that it's a slow roll on points when it comes to just a tackle here, a stuff here, and there's a couple little pieces that build up. But then you can get these big moments where you get the interception, you get the pick six, and then you get a lot of great value. So when you're looking at defenses on a whole, and you see those big numbers, and, the Bucs had a lot of great overall defensive games when, they had these interceptions, you had these big plays. But when you have a single player that's capable of getting a pick six, and you've got multiple players that are capable of getting those pick sixes, you have the possibility of making a lot more points on those multiple players than just a single position that you get with a defensive position compared to others. So like I said, with this league, originally when we started IDP, we had 3 slots. Now we've got 6, and it's because all of us are addicted to getting these extra little booms of points from these big defensive plays. So a couple players that I have in this league in particular, I have Levante David, who had a lot of amazing plays, a lot of amazing tackles, not tons and tons of sacks compared to some other players, but he was so consistent on tackles per week that he was averaging me a lot of points, which was fantastic for that position. And when you look at your overall team in fantasy, what we're trying to do is get the most average points per position week to week. So that's what's really fun about some of these defensive guys. You can average 10 points per that position. So if you have a receiver that ducks out for one game, you're still getting amazing points from those defensive plays. Mm-hmm. Maybe a pick 6 or 2. I got Minka Fitzpatrick, which I was super excited about when they made that trade. I was like, hell to the yes. I got Minka, and I think I got him for like $1 too. So it was one of those really lucky pickups. And he's just someone that, has that big playability. He'll have this consistent, tackles and stuffs in different moments. And that's fine. Your average defensive player is not going to get you 10 points a game. Linebackers more so than others will get you those 10 points. But, if you can average anywhere between 4 to 7 points per position in IDP, you're pretty excited about that. It's a good consistent number. But if you've got someone like Minka, who's fantastic at sitting back, waiting, reading the quarterback's eyes, and getting those interceptions, that's a lot of good fantasy goodness. And it's just exciting. You can, maybe I become a bit more like Scrooge McDuck about these points and accumulating these points. Just give me all the points. It's more opportunities.
That's how you win. That's the name of the game. Points, I just give me the guy who scores points. I love Minka. Some people kind of dog him in IDP because he's too big play heavy, but I'm like, man, if he gets 75 tackles a year, like that's fine. Like there are plenty of defensive backs that don't do that and also don't get picks. So I'll take him. That's kind of my thought process on him. All right. So do you play Dynasty over much different than you play redraft? I know that some people are like some people say they completely approach Dynasty from like a long-term perspective, but I've kind of realized I think I always play to win. Every year I'm playing to win. So I'm always like, I'm always all my teams I'm just working on. So it's kind of like redraft where I'm active, like I do my draft, but then I'm always trying to make my team a little bit better and I'm always trying to win every year. I'm not a big fan of like the long drawn out or like the guy that has like, look at all these picks I have for the next 5 years. I'm like, great, like I'll mail you the championship. Like that's my mentality in Dynasty. But
Yeah.
and that's kind of a redraft mentality that I've brought over where it's like this is the year because every year is the year.
Yeah.
But do you play like that, or are you a little more calculated, long scheming, or?
I've played in a couple. I have a couple dynasty leagues now, a couple extra ones that were accumulated due to COVID last year that I grabbed onto, and there were some that I just kind of lit on fire, and I was like, I will just take all the picks and figure it out next year because I was just trying to figure out too many things at the same time. And I'm like, you know what? I'll just get all the picks and see what happens. So in one dynasty league, I have like something stupid like 6 or 7 first round picks this coming draft. So it's like, and I've just got tons of youth. So great. I get to figure out what I want to do with those pieces, make all the picks and draft all I want, and then maybe make a lot of trades and make some moves around. That's what's really fun about leagues like that is when you set yourself up, in my opinion, to just completely flip the script. And it's like, you know what? I'm okay with not winning this year. It's fine. I can figure out how to remap it next year. And what I like about that is because I'm going to have to do that extra research on that, I'm going to make better decisions on different dynasty leagues that I already have that have been long going, like this other one that I'd been talking about, where I maybe don't have as many draft picks. And that's okay because I know far deeper into the draft who I can wait on and then pick up in the other draft and then get them really late, get them really cheap, and then maybe make some trades to get other players that I'm really excited about. So I think it's just a different way to look at it. I mean, I definitely always want to play to win every year. I mean, in redraft, I definitely play harder to win. But when it comes to Dynasty, I feel like it's a lot easier for me to see how the season is shaping out and be like, all right, do I realistically have the ability to make the push? Yes. All right. We pull the levers. We do what we got to do. We make the push to try and win. Last year, I made it to the championships again and was trying to, repeat because I'd won the year before, but I didn't. But hey, I was able to set my dynasty league up because of COVID. I made all of my decisions based on trying to keep this same squad for 2 years. So everything that I did this past year, I will have next year as well. So I know that I've already set myself up to be in a winning position for this coming year. And that's what's kind of fun about doing the salaries and getting all these contracts to line up. It's just being able to see, okay, I am structured to win now. If you're able to see that bubble, I think a little bit easier than certain other ones where, okay, this contract is terminating. So I know I need to get this player offloaded and then see who else I can get. And then I can figure out how I float amongst I can win now, I should wait, and then just be okay with getting the draft picks. And then, it's cyclical. Yeah. And I think that right now in that league, I'm in a good sweet spot. It's like, I got another chance, one more chance this next year. And then I might have to, blow it up and redo it all again.
I like that the salary cap kind of hitting its stride, like knowing that's an interesting element there. And I also like what you said about having that perspective of blowing up a team. Maybe I've got like a dozen or so teams. Maybe I should blow one up, just see what it's like and see if it does make me, view some players differently. I've got one or two I've toyed with. There's a couple where the problem is, like I said, because I played to win, like I either made the playoffs in like almost all my leagues or I was like one win away. So I'm just like, I know these teams are at least decent. But it's just like, man, there's one or two where I think I might give that strategy a whirl this year and just see what I can come up with. So here's something I want to talk about. This is kind of a strategy. It's, in Dynasty, you got to look, like you said, big picture, buying the dip, players that are not what they were in the narrative 2-3 years ago, like Juju, for instance. 2 years ago, Dynasty wide receiver 1. Now, I mean, he's like a flex guy. Deebo Samuel. I remember last year at the end of the season, coming off of the Super Bowl, it was a very Deebo Sambo-centric world. And now it's a very, not like anti-Deebo Samuel, but it's just like he's not getting the hype that he was for a while. Baker Mayfield, another player, he's going to be a top 5 dynasty quarterback. He had a bad season and a half. What do you think about, being able to pull the trigger and buy the dip on players like that? Is that something that more people need to be? Is that a strategy that you implement, or do you have a hard time doing that? Because I sometimes will go to buy the dip, but I feel like I'm a little too cheap, so I don't actually get it, and then I miss it.
See, I think my issue is it's hard for me to let go when I've been burned in the past. So it's hard for me to rebuy a player that has burned me a previous season. There's certain players that, they have your heart, and so you'll be able to give them one more chance. But when it comes to someone like Juju, I mean, he could immediately switch his value depending on if he gets moved somewhere. We don't know what it's going to shape up to be. There could be some people that would say the argument, well, he wasn't anything last year. What makes him different this year? Because they're not looking at the situational move and that benefit.
Just perceived value, though. In the Dynasty community, you don't actually have to play a snap of football to change your value.
Yep.
I mean, it's funny, like Juju's a perfect example. No matter where he goes, as long as it's not the Jets, his value will see a spike. I mean, there's almost so, and he won't have done anything. Nothing will be, it just happens. That's Dynasty. It's funny you say that about players who burn you. I drafted DeAndre Hopkins the Brock Osweiler year, and I've never touched him since. It was a nightmare. And I went and saw him play too at Lucas Oil Stadium against Andrew Luck. And it was a nightmare. Like the first play of the game, like Brock Osweiler overthrew him wide open by like 15 yards. And I was like, dear God.
That's horrible. Yeah. But no, I mean, that's the other thing I think when it comes to strategy of buying the dip on a player. I mean, I will if his situation changes. If his situation doesn't change, I'm not going to, because what else? I need to see other things change. Or maybe if it's someone that's in a crowded backfield and they're still in the same situation, but they've offloaded some players. Okay, their situation and their possible target share has shifted. Then I would potentially take a buy on that player. But if things aren't shifting, then I'm not going to take that risk.
Yeah, it's interesting too. Things did shift and that the very first best example is that next year I did not draft DeAndre Hopkins in the 5th round. After taking him in the 1st that year, he finished that next year as the wide receiver 1. I mean, it immediately hurt. I got hurt on both ends. I skipped the value in the 5th, so I didn't play out the strategy, and I took him too early and he burned me. Same thing, but look at Todd Gurley. There was people that got Todd Gurley that one year, but the last Jeff Fisher year, he was terrible. And so nobody wanted him. He was available that same year. I remember so well. I don't know why I remember this year so well. Maybe it's because I almost won. Todd Gurley, he was like the number 1 running back after being like wide running back, like 18. So buying the dip it's how you accumulate value outside of the draft. And it can happen in the draft as well. I'm trying to think if there's anybody, a few of those guys I named. I think Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins in Superflex leagues right now are 2 of my favorite guys that, for whatever reason, they're not really being valued the way they should, because they're going to be around for a while. And I feel like because they haven't really blown up, this is a dip moment for them potentially. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about platforms quickly. We have the big dogs: ESPN, NFL, CBS. They've been around forever. Fantrax, MFL. And then we got the new kids on the block, Sleeper. Just quickly, what's your experience? What do you think about the fact that ESPN is the same app that it's basically been since the dawn of time?
Well, I've been on ESPN, leagues since college. It's the first platform I started drafting on, so I'm very used to it. I love the mock draft format that they have. It's
really,
I like it. I think it's the easiest way to just jump into a draft with your friends and just get a good mock going. Although I am warming up to more options that are on Sleeper, because I have a lot of teams on Sleeper as well. I've had, let's see, this year was the year I had the most platforms. I was on MFL, I was on Sleeper, I was on Yahoo, and I was on ESPN. There was a lot of leagues to check every week. Yeah. It was exhausting. But Sleeper is growing on me more and more in a lot of the different methods that it has. For my league, my main Dynasty one, we've been talking about building our own app for Dynasty, just because we have so many nitty-gritty little rules and things. So we're working on developing our own, and we're trying to see if we can make one. So currently the guys are working on that.
Have you heard of RSO? Reality Sports Online? You should check them out. They're a smaller platform, but they allow you to do a lot of salary cap type of stuff, very customizable. I've only thing I've really heard negative about them is some of their designations for IDPs are a little off, but I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
just industry standard at this point. So
Yeah.
can't hold that against them. Okay, here's kind of a fun one. This might get a little in the weeds, but this will be fun. Okay, so we talked about strategy and understanding your leagues. And one of the things to me that's most important in fantasy is understanding your league. So each league, and I call them ecosystems. Each league is
Mm-hmm.
a unique ecosystem, and within that ecosystem, there are predators, there are prey, and there are scavengers. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
how I have broken down my league mates' archetypes, the people I play with, and then identifying those people within that league. I've never really shared this before, but I think about it a lot. So I've kind of have a few archetypes I'll just kind of give you here, just kind of, and I'm sure you will probably agree with some of them, but
Mm-hmm.
everybody's like, oh, I'm a shark. Everyone who's good at fantasy is like, I'm a shark. So when I think of a shark, I'm thinking that's the guy in your league who is constantly trading. He doesn't always win, but he's constantly trading. He's always talking, he'll message you back quickly. Like that's the shark. And he usually gets to the playoffs and his team's pretty good. But his team this week is not going to be the same team in 6 weeks because that he's turning people over. He's usually staying pretty good, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
one of your predators. My other predators, and this is the one I think that a lot of people sleep on in their dynasty leagues. I call them serpents. So I think of a guy like a boa constrictor in the rainforest, just sitting by the path waiting. Weeks, months go by, doesn't move, nothing happens, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then boom, this is the guy that pops up in your league, and you're like, holy shit, he just got Christian McCaffrey and Patrick Mahomes. He hasn't been online in 6 months. I
Yeah.
look at that. That's that guy. He's very opportunistic the way that he's a predator. And he'll wait till the right moment. He's not the shark. He's not busy. He's not bothering people. That's the guy you really got to worry about in my mind. That's the guy. He'll make 2 or 3 trades a year, but they're always in his favor, and they're just always like mind-blowing stuff. And they usually do it around draft time, because that's when everybody starts getting a little upset. Then I've got your sheep. We all know who the sheep are. They're the people that listen to the ball. No shade on the sheep. Everyone's a sheep to a degree. These are people that listen to the ballers. They're scanning fantasy pros. They listen. These are the people that hang out in the hot sheets. They're on the Twitter sphere. They're kind of the accumulation of just all of the information, and they just do whatever all of the information tells them to do, and that's fine. Those people get eaten by sharks and serpents. And then the other one I have is I call them vultures, and these are the guys. They're not predators, but they think they are. They usually, if someone makes a big trade, they'll maybe make a trade afterwards with that same guy. They want to be kind of a part of things. They're always kind of moving around, but they're never really a serious threat. So when I look at my leagues, I kind of put people into these kind of categories. Those vultures will also be the guys that won't do trades. Like they'll spin the wire a lot, but they won't interact a lot with the league sometimes. They're just kind of off on their own. So that's kind of how I view leagues, and I call them the ecosystem of your league. And when you identify these people, you can decide how your relationship's going to be with them. Symbiotic, are we kind of sharing territory here? Do I have an understanding with you that I will see you in the playoffs and we're going to laugh about, that trade that just went down with that vulture and that sheep. So when you view your leagues, is there a certain way that you kind of view teams or view your opponents that kind of helps you figure out who you should be worried about or how you approach that individual based on their play style?
Yeah, I like that you call it an ecosystem. I think that's very true of a lot of different types of leagues. I mean, my one big league, like I said, we've been playing together since college. So we also will draft in person. We have a lot of these, very personable interactions with each other. So as a result of that, there's definitely the guys that are always trying to talk trade with you, or they think my favorite is the guy that always thinks you overvalue your player that they're trying to get from you. Yeah. Well, you want him, so how am I overvaluing him if I want more for him? No, he's not even worth that. He's not even worth that. I'm like, yeah. So definitely they fall into the vulture category. They're just trying to take advantage where they can. And it's like, no, I'm paying attention. I'm not asleep. You can't just take my players from me.
And then a shark shows up and gets a deal done, and then they're messaging you again about a part of that deal.
Oh yeah. And my favorite is when that person, when they see you trade that person to someone else, well, you just didn't want me to have him. No, you didn't make me a good offer. This
Yeah.
is not personal. This is business.
Yeah.
Fantasy is always business. I think that there's also a lot of people that will constantly trade. I find that exhausting. Like I love to get excited about my players and watch them grow, especially in dynasty formats. I think that's part of the fun of having these dynasty players.
Yeah.
So as soon as I get a guy, I want to watch him play. I don't want to just immediately hand him off. Like,
thank you.
I traded him. I traded to get him, or
Yeah,
I drafted him because I wanted him to play.
This is a family. This is a family.
This is my family. Don't take my kids. These are my
kids. Family
kids.
business over here. All right.
Yes. I mean, there's definitely other players where, it sounds terrible. They're my least favorite kids. You can take them. But
Yeah.
there's other guys that, like, as soon as you get them and then someone tries to trade you for them, it's like, I just worked to get him. Why would I trade him away? Unless you're offering me everything.
There's nothing you could do to get him from me at this point. There's certain players that I've landed on I got a trade offer today from a guy. It was a strong as hell offer for Terry McLaurin, like strong. And I was he's like, what'd you think about that offer? I was like, honestly, it was a really strong offer and I'm going to decline.
Yeah. But then I think when you play fantasy and you've made someone a good offer and they're just not biting, it's not because you didn't give them a good offer. It's because they just have this personal bias on this player and they really want them.
Exactly. I put him on my team for a reason. Like, I know that, everyone's, and that's a shark move. The shark, again, that's the guy and everybody's for sale. That's a shark thing. Serpents aren't like that either. Serpents just didn't get bigger and bigger and bigger. These are the guys that are sitting there and you just look over and all of a sudden they have Christian McCaffrey, 4 first-round picks, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin. I mean, like, and you're just like, oh my God, like, how did this happen? I've barely even seen you in here. But that's the thing, like, they're just accumulating mass. So I think it's interesting to identify these people in your leagues. That's kind of one of the first things I try to do. You can notice a lot of them in the draft. The Sharks are old. The Sharks, in the draft, pretty much in the draft, I call the Serpents are the ones that don't do many trades. But, people in rookie drafts or startup drafts, so when trades are just flying. I mean, it's just like, that's when I'm like noticing people's trends, like who's trading with who's getting taken advantage of, who's, targeting, and like also paying attention to who they're going for when they do these. You can, it helps you identify who the sheep are. Okay, who's moving up to get Herbert here? Okay, who's moving up to get Kyler? Oh, he drafted Kyler. Okay, like, we got a Kyler guy. So what do I know about Kyler guys? So, I categorize people. And I think that's something that's a little bit, we can talk about the X's and O's. We can talk about the fantasy points. We can player pontificate about yards per reception, yards per catch, blah, blah. At the end of the day, your opponent is some guy on his couch, eating chicken wings, or some gal. And the more I know about that person, the more likely I'm going to be able to beat them with the variables I've put on my team. So I put a lot of stock into understanding my league's ecosystems. And it also helps me know which leagues to waste my time in, what people to waste my time communicating with. And, like, there are leagues where there are 4 people that I communicate with, because that's the people I know things will happen. We have a symbiotic relationship. And then they have their other people. So I sometimes know if I want a player, I can't offer a trade to so-and-so because he doesn't like me. So I have to go through such and such. He and I have a great relationship, and he and him. So the more you know that, the more ease of use you have within your ecosystem, and you can put yourself up there as an apex predator. So that's kind of I've thought about writing a more detailed article about it. I think it's something that game theory, I feel like that's something that gets lost sometimes in the spreadsheet world we live in today of fantasy football.
Because ultimately what also comes down to, like, besides the stats of how a player is going to perform, is you're playing your opponent as well as his players. So depending on how that person plays the game, if there's someone that is a bit lazier, maybe forgets to set their lineups, that you can take advantage in certain ways. If there's someone that always trying to trade and always trying to get a deal, trying to come up with 3-way, 4-way trades, trying to get it going, you have to play that person a little bit differently. You could make a last minute, shift in your lineup, and they can be like, why'd you do that?
Yeah, exactly. You gotta spook them. Spook them. Oh, there's certain guys you're like, all right, at 11:55, I gotta send them a message. Hey, did you see Kenny Galladay's questionable?
Yeah, or like I'll leave a spot open maybe a little bit too long, so they think I'm not paying attention, and then I'll switch it, and then they're like, "Shit, I thought you weren't gonna do that."
Yeah, I used to think I was clever doing that, but I was like leaving Tyreek on my bench, so it was like obvious that I was like not gonna do that. So my buddies don't. They don't buy it anymore, but yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sam, I'm kind of not say at a loss for words here, but I'm at a loss of my show sheets at the end. So any other topics or things you want to kind of discuss about Dynasty overall, trade stuff or player stuff you want to talk about, or anything at all? We can take, a minute or two if you'd like, or
Sure. I mean, I think I would just if people haven't played Dynasty before, I'm sorry right now. Knox, my cat, is trying to get
name.
His name is Knox, and he's trying to
get.
Yeah, he's trying to Knox like the Harry Potter spell because he's a black cat, like lights out. So, anyways, I'm a big nerd. That aside,
hey, Harry, do you listen to Binge Mode?
No, I've heard that before though. I need to
listen to Binge Mode. Write that down.
Yeah, I'm writing it down right now. No, I would just say my one thing on Dynasty that if people don't play that I would encourage people to try is there's so many different ways you can play Dynasty. So I would look at different platforms. I would look at, other people that play and ask questions to people online like myself or others that play IDP and get some notes, recommendations. And it's really, really fun when you play with, your core group of friends that are always watching football together anyways. For me, it's completely grown those friendships in a lot of really fun ways because you're so committed to that team, and it makes football Sundays all the more fun because you're going to watch it with that league, and that's when you get into fun shenanigans with that league. My league is very, very close, in my opinion, to the show The League in the way that we rip each other apart. There's so much trash talk. There's so much history with the way that people trade, and it's like, oh, well, we know that this guy's going to blow his fab money in the first 2 weeks. Like, it just creates such a fun, different level of banter than your average redraft league. And then when it comes to learning more about individual players and individual coaching styles and individual just teams and how they manage and how they play their systems, I think that Dynasty gives you another layer of understanding on that because you're putting more time and effort into knowing why this player is performing on certain teams and why they perform really well against other teams. It just makes it more fun to really sink your teeth into the X's and O's and why those players are doing well and get you more excited about the upcoming guys. And you watch that tape. Okay, well, I saw that he's got amazing agility. He'll be great on this team. And so for me, one player that I got really hyped about, and I unfortunately talked about it too much because I didn't end up getting to draft him in any leagues because everyone heard that I wanted him. I really wanted Justin Jefferson. I was like, the guy that's sitting on the other side with Adam Thielen in that offense is going to have a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of targets to go around. This is the guy. And everyone's like, there's other guys. I'm like, yes, but this is the guy that's going to get all the targets. I missed out on him, and I was so pissed because he's a fantastic Dynasty owner, like player to have. So there's those. It's okay. There's going to be other guys, and that's what I love. There's always going to be somebody else. It's going to be fine.
I love that attitude.
But that's the fun thing about Dynasty in particular. It's just that you can really get such another level of attachment to these players year in and year out. So you're not just trying to play catch up in August or July of like, okay, well, so this guy's on this team, I guess I'll try and do this. It really makes it more of a year-round sport, which given the situation we had last year with COVID, it makes it, there's plenty to do in the off season. So you're missing football, but not nearly missing it as much as you normally would be because you're constantly making trades. You're constantly making moves along with, the entire NFL as they make trades. You can make trades throughout, and it just makes it so much more fun because it's almost like year-round football with all the stuff that happens.
Yeah, football is definitely a 17-week game, or we got the playoffs, but fantasy football can be in a year-round game. The best thing about the off season is you can win without winning. All you got to do is screenshot all your best teams and talk about them. So there's always those guys that they can never win the league, but man, they win the off season every year. I love those. That's another thing about Dynasty is it gives you more chances to win. You can win, in the off season when nobody can tell you anything, or you can win the rookie draft and you just win because you got the best player. And you never really actually have to do anything for months. So you get little wins along the way that kind of build you up and bring you into the season. So, yeah. Well, that's pretty much all I got. We went right around an hour, which is perfect. That's kind of what I wanted to do. I didn't want to keep you on here too long. I really appreciate your time and insight. I really am glad that you're getting into Sleeper. That's kind of my platform that I like to play on now. I think for new people playing fantasy football, especially Dynasty, Sleeper, as far as a user interface and ease of use, it's maybe one of the learning curve is a bit high, but
Mhm.
once you get it, it's very seamless and it makes sense. So I know ESPN is probably a little bit more. We're all kind of used to it, and Yahoo
Yeah.
as well. But once you get past like this, the general differences, it's kind of like whenever you go from, if you are a Mac user, from a Microsoft to a Mac. It's like at first it's like, eh, this is icky, but then you're like, oh, this makes sense, and then you go back to a Microsoft and you're like, oh, this is terrible. But
That's a
then you
good
get
way to describe it.
but then you get used to it again, so it is what it is.
Yep.
All right, well, plug anything you got coming up, any stuff that you want us to go check out, the IDP Army to check out. We appreciate you, like I said, taking your time, and then I will get us out of here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, guys. You can find me over with the other guys at Fantasy Focused. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. We are going through a too early top 5 right now on YouTube. This past Tuesday, we did quarterbacks. So our too early rankings for those quarterbacks, and you can go and hear all of our different rankings across the board, and we talk trash back and forth why our picks are better than each other's. We think we've got running backs coming up next week. I've also got the fantasy debate with Sam and Tate with me and my co-host Derek Tate. We'll be recording tomorrow, and we've got our normal squad up on Sundays. We do a really fun something that came about as of COVID last year, where we do drafts of other things besides football. So we draft our favorite Adam Sandler movies, and we talk why they're the number one over others and why this was a sleeper pick. So we kind of find other ways that we can draft and create squads, which is really fun. But we've got tons of new content coming up, so subscribe to that and you can check those out. Also, I've got a lot of really fun one-on-one interviews, one-on-one with Sam, you can find on our YouTube there as well. I was able to interview Matthew Berry and Field Yates last year, as well as Cynthia Freeland and Liz Loza and a lot of other cool people in the space, so it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, lots of fun content to check out, and I'm always jumping on fun guest pods, so check me out anywhere. You can follow me on Twitter at Samantha Holt.
Bada boom, bada bing. You heard it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. Ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, IDP Army, thank you so much. Samantha, thank you. Talking Dynasty, guys, make sure you, like I said, go follow Samantha, all her stuff. Check that out. Go check out the Patreon. I'm going to be dropping some good stuff on there in a month or so. I kind of gave you guys a rundown on that. Still working on that, but it's going to be awesome. It's going to be basically the definitive IDP thing for 2021, so definitely be aware of that. I'm going to be putting out some more information about that. Is maybe a little teaser trailer coming soon, so subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Make sure you thumbs up, and until next time, IDP Army, good luck.